Welcome to the Man Up, Man Down podcast, presented by Volker Beluda and David Pawsey. We discuss the pressures and challenges faced by men approaching middle age that we're often too embarrassed to speak about with our friends. You can find us online at www.manupdown.com. Enjoy the show and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review.
So welcome to another episode of Man Up, Man Down. Today we're excited to be joined by Laurence H. Johns, and Laurence has got an incredible story. Laurence is a seasoned men's work professional dedicated to simplifying and demystifying men's personal development, which he has been doing for more than 2 decades. His remarkable journey, forged an unusual background, led him to a profound understanding of what men need to thrive. Growing up in the vibrant yet challenging streets of pre-gentrified East London, Laurence learnt early the dynamics of survival and power. With a father involved in a world of crime and a model of masculinity rooted in power and position, Laurence entered adulthood carrying the weight of exhausting expectations. His 20s brought worldly success, directing a prestigious London book dealership, global travels, and creative endeavours like writing and directing a feature film. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. The allure of excess and indulgent masked deeper demons. It wasn't until the 2008 financial crash, facing bankruptcy, bailiffs, and the responsibility of a newborn son, that Laurence confronted the stark truth. In his darkest hour, Laurence found salvation in his brothers from the Mankindproject. Their unwavering support pulled him from the abyss. With this newfound strength, he dedicated himself to men's personal development. Currently serving as a development and outreach director of the Mankindproject in UK and Ireland, Laurence also co-founded Masculinity X, an impact-first community that empowers men to lead lives of connection, challenge, contribution and celebration. Using easy-to-understand personal development tools and opportunities to serve, Laurence is on a mission to make the very best of men's personal development accessible to all men, regardless of their background. From that, I can tell that you are obviously a great writer, so I hope my thespian skills lived up to that.
It's interesting. Whenever I hear that, it's like it almost makes it sound like it was a plan. You know, it's funny how life can seem like you made all the right moves when you look back on it, but actually it was just a big painful mess.
Well, there's a quote that we often mention. I think it was Steve Jobs, but you can't connect the dots going forward. It's only when you look back. And one thing I just sort of wanted to pick up on, you sort of mentioned about staring into the abyss and, helping men. Sadly, I had some news this week about a friend that didn't pull himself back. Volker's sort of had similar sad news. It's just a painful but very powerful reminder of why we do what we do. For me, it's been a bit of a feeling of helplessness of, this podcast meant to save lives. I've failed, but knowing what my friend went through, he had a lot of professional help. But, sadly, he lost his battle. But, as I said, this is what we're here to talk about. Sort of one thing I do sort of want to say is you sort of touched on your father there, and something we've talked about a lot on this podcast is sort of the lessons that we learn from our fathers, whether that's sort of something that whether that's something that we pick up of like, oh, that is how a man should be. So that sounds like a good place to start, if you don't mind, is sort of talking about your experience growing up in that background.
Yeah, fathers are an interesting subject, aren't they? Parents are in general, but I think as men, we tend to talk about the influence of fathers more because I guess they're our model. Because looking at it psychologically, men do get a second break. There's like the break from me and mum, which is where we individualize. We realize, oh, I'm not part of this person. I'm this person on my own. And then for boys, we then also look at mum going, and I'm not actually even like her. So who am I like? Oh, I'm like this guy. that comes in, and so I guess I've got to be around. I guess I'm going to have to take more interest in that and hope that takes more interest in me. So however we look at it, our fathers become a key influence in our life. Even if they're not in our life, the absence of them makes them a key figure in our life. And yeah, my father was certainly a huge figure in my life. And I think the thing that I find interesting about my father and my relationship with my father is he was two men. He was two men. There was this outside persona of the criminal out there in the world doing all of those things, Jack the lad, heavy drinking, fast living. Like that was very much his persona, And then I got to see the character. And I always think I got to see a glimpse of the man my dad could have been if his situations would have been different, or if indeed there was stuff like this about that he could have got involved in. Because his heart, he was a very gentle, loving, cultured and artistic man, but he grew up in, post-war East London, like slums. His story of his childhood is like something that Monty Python would joke about. I remember him telling me a story that for 1 week, all they had to eat in his house was cooking chocolate because he'd broken into a warehouse and stole a box of it. I mean, that was the kind of way that he grew up. And that not everyone goes into crime, but he did. That was the equivalent of knocking on the factory gates in those days. It was time of the craze, time of all of that. And I think that shaped him. And I think I picked up very early on two things from that. I kind of picked up that there's this version of us that we can present to the world, which I now know is persona. And then there's the part of us that actually is harder to let people see, which is my character, which is the man that I could have been. And that's really influenced how I perceive the work now, because what's clear to me and what I build my work around is that there's the man we are, the man that we could have always been, and in there in the middle is what gets in the way, and that's the man I had to become to survive. And so it gave me that, and it also, I learned from him the hierarchy of masculinity. I learned that there's a version of masculinity that is a constant power play and jostling for position, especially in that environment. And I've found that whether it be crime or boarding school, it tends to show up in different places. That if the bottom is a really scary place, then we spend a lot of our time jostling to try and get to the top at our own detriment and the detriment of those around us often. And so, yeah, that was very much my lessons that I learned from my dad and his particularly strange world that he was in.
There's a lot in there to start with, Laurence. Trying to think where we want to start here, because you mentioned the father figure, right? Especially for for men, right? So we had now I forgot his name, David. I'm sure you can help me.
Steve Coors.
Yeah, Steve Coors on the podcast talking about his relationship to his father and fixing the relationship with his father, and knowingly or unknowingly, we all look up to our fathers, right? Whether they're still around or not. And to a certain extent, at least for me, it's my father's father as well. So it's my grandfather I'm looking at as well. And I found it really interesting, just actually a couple of weeks ago, when my youngest, so I got two boys as well, so very, very male-driven family, said, I don't know what the exact conversation was, but he was speaking to his mother, my wife, saying that, I'd rather go out with daddy and do something, right? So, I don't know, go to the shops or whatever. He's more fun to hang around with. And it's not because he doesn't like my wife, but because he probably most likely sees me more as a role model, right? And that's like, shit, I have to up my game, right? Because I don't want to be the wrong role model. So there's a lot in there.
Yeah, I mean, with fathers, it's like, I think in doing the work in this journey of self-discovery, there comes a point where we either say, sort of, come here, and we heal the relationship, and we forgive and learn to love and accept that our father wasn't this God that which we sort of needed when we're little, was just this human, and actually just this human, probably who was quite young, right, at the time, tends to be, and on his own journey. So we either heal that and accept that and say, come here, I accept you as you are, or we say, get out of the way. There's really kind of only two ways that we can deal with the father wound in that way. But what I think you're talking about there is the difference in the role of the father compared to the difference in the role of the mother, which is a fundamental difference. You know, traditionally, it's fundamentally different. And the difference is, and why I think we prefer to be with dad when we're younger, is we know that with mum there's safety and there's nurture. But with dad, there's the opportunity often for some danger, be it even just rough play, some danger, and that we're gonna become more competent. So with mum, we're going to get nurtured traditionally, and with dad, we're going to get challenged. And we like challenge. We love challenge. Look at young boys when they're out. They want to, if there's something to hurt themselves on, they will hurt themselves on it. You know, no doubt. Because they're trying to prove their competence. And dad, if we have a healthy relationship with our father, is there to encourage that.
So, I mean, were you aware that your father was involved in crime, or was it our dad just goes out to work and then it's something you sort of worked out later in life? Or, I mean, was it just in the environment that, I mean, you sort of, you know, interesting point that you sort of said about he had to steal chocolate to survive, essentially. And you know, and that again, it's sort of like, well, that's what drives men, is survival, essentially. And I mean, like, a phrase that I often sort of think about is, you know, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. And no one goes out, well, I want to go and do something that's wrong. I mean, so yeah, were you sort of aware of that environment? And did you sort of think, oh, well, that's naturally how my life will go? I mean, did you sort of have to make a conscious decision to follow a different path?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. First of all, I never remember it being hidden. It was always a part of my life. One of my earliest memories, and if I'm ever doing regression work, one of the traumas I go back to is there was an incident when I was very young. I mean, I must have been 4 or 5 years old from my recollection. And I used to collect Lego, and I had like a Lego city. You know, they used to have those green tiles and you could build a city. And I had built this Lego city. So I must have been 4, 5, 6 years old, something like that. And I remember the front door come through and the police were raiding the house. And the police came into the room, 2 of them. And I look back at it now, and they must have been young themselves, you know, probably young policemen on the job. And I remember that one of them just started smashing up the Lego, just smashing it. And even then I kind of sensed this ain't about looking for anything. There's some power play, because I could sense his friend trying to pull him back, like saying like, this is kind of out of line. And that set up my relationship with authority like perfectly. I didn't trust any authority, anything in uniform. It was like, fuck you, like I don't trust you. So it was never hidden. In fact, I was often part of it. You know, like he would go out if he was committing fraud, like checkbooks and stuff like that. He would go with me I would go with him because no one would have thought you would do that with your child. Right?
Yeah.
So I knew it. I knew, and it was always part of my life. But somehow I always knew it wasn't for me, because I saw the pain that my father was in behind all of that. I saw the times when you're either hiding from the police or you're hiding from another criminal. I saw the times when he knew that he was going to go in prison, and the heartbreak that was going to do. I saw the other side of it. I saw the opposite of the Guy Ritchie presentation of crime, which is the outside view. The inside view is it's not a life for anyone. It's a place of fear and pain. And that, coupled with, it was the age of the video nasties, and I got to see Scum a little bit too early. And
Right.
Listen, I just ain't cut from that cloth. Like, I ain't going in there. So I was never tempted into crime. I never really even dabbled with it, apart from kind of like drugs. But
Yeah.
you know, nothing major. So it was never hidden, and I always knew it wasn't for me. And my dad actively discouraged it. You know, I think he would have been disappointed if I ended up the same.
Yeah. So is he still alive, if you don't mind me asking?
No, he died about 6 years ago. 6 years ago.
And I mean, you sort of said about him going to prison. I mean, was he in for like a long... I mean, well, was he around more than he was in prison, or...
He was around pretty consistently for like the first 10 years of my life. And then he was pretty consistently in prison. So he would come out for a bit and then he would go in. And that's difficult when you're a teenager. You know, suddenly there's this authority figure gone, and then suddenly it comes back. So that had its own kind of challenges.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was around a lot when I was young.
So what did that do to you, you think? I mean, that would have been, you know, if you see going in and out of prison.
I mean, the thing is like, one, you lose dad, right? But two, the thing I remember most was actually, especially when I was a teenager, when he went into prison, a certain level of my protection had gone. So I become vulnerable. And not only did I become vulnerable, but also we suddenly had no money. I mean, that's the thing, that when they take a criminal out from the family family gets punished. Because although it's been getting from ill-gotten gains, it's still getting gotten. Right? And so suddenly there's nothing. So suddenly I'd find myself in situations where I had abundance when he was around and up to no good. Suddenly nothing. And that was a boom and bust pattern that I followed in my adulthood, you know. So it had that effect. And also when I became vulnerable, I had to get involved in acts of violence that I wasn't comfortable with. So I'd have to defend myself. And that is some of the, you know, that's probably one of the other traumatic experiences I remember when I look back on my childhood, was having to attack someone first and feeling physically sick after that, which was another time I knew that world weren't for me.
So, I mean, you sort of talked about, well, so how did you then sort of end up, well, in sort of the publishing world and becoming a creative?
Everything sort of happened by chance, really. I happened to, I left school. I got asked to leave my school because of my behaviour, and they were like, "Leave now or we'll expel you." So I just didn't come back. And then after a couple of years of that, I thought, you know what, I've got to do something. So I enrolled in Hackney Community College, which even the teachers used to say, this is last chance saloon. And but there was an amazing group of teachers there. And it was especially there was this one man, Sean Offord, who I remember very well, who actually I've got in contact with him recently, and he told me that actually his dissertation when he was a student was about working class masculinity. So this guy kind of really took me under his wing and let me know there were some other options there, and I'd always been interested in seeing film. So I thought, you know what, I'll go off and study film. And I decided and found out, much to my own amazement, that I was a kind of straight A student when I applied myself. So I ended up going to university, doing all that. I got involved in selling books to make money. And so making films, publishing books, all that, it just kind of followed because I was really interested in the sort of American countercultural scene. So it just kind of followed naturally that. And then after that, it was during that time that I got involved in men's personal development. My boss was involved in the Mankindproject, and he could see that, you know, things started going well. And for me, when things go well, it's as dangerous as when things go bad. And so I started kind of partying quite hard, drinking, using, all that stuff. He spotted that, asked me to go on the New Warrior training adventure, which I went on. And that sort of changed my life for a while. And so I got involved in that, was doing that actively. Then things started to go bad for me. And things completely collapsed in like around 2010. You know, the economic situation of 2009 finally hit home. My galleries that I had closed down, my publishing company went out of business. I was in active addiction, and I really hit rock bottom. And luckily I'd had the Mankindproject there, and so I threw myself into that. And it was having to rebuild myself and find a way to rebuild myself that really kind of showed me that, you know, maybe I have a way of passing it on. And part of the feedback that I'd got was that I had an ability to make complicated ideas seem simple and easy to understand. And I'd been frustrated with how complicated things had seemed in that world. So really since then, I've been trying to move through leadership and facilitation as much as I can. And each time try and break it down and make it simpler. So that it's easier for men to get. So we don't have sad stories like the ones that I'm sure that we all have, you know, of men that have slipped through the net. And I believe that we could do a better job in sharing the information that we all have, bringing men in and actually making it easier to penetrate so that we can be more effective, which is really my life's mission now.
Hello folks, it's Volker here. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. As you know, I coach executives, whether that is for leadership skills, or sales leadership skills, or working as a therapist too. There are few ways I can help you to get unstuck, improve your work-life balance, or become a better version of yourself. So you will be more productive and have more time for your family. Whatever it is, you can join my client list of people from General Electric, Pepsi, DHL, Boots, and many others. Book a free exploratory call via my website, www.obnat.us. That's OBNAT.us. Now back to the show.
I'm going to let Volker get in with a question about the Mankindproject, but there's just something you said there that really resonated with me, which I just wondered if you could sort of, embellish a bit. You sort of said about when things go right, that can be even more dangerous or as dangerous. I mean, is that because you don't feel you deserve it, or it's you could lose it? I mean,
I mean, for me, it was like when things go bad, I'm sort of sad, but I kind of know it. I know that place. When things got really successful for me, I just pressed the self-destruct button. I look back on it now and realize I pressed the self-destruct button. And I know now from working on it, the reason why is when I was young, whenever we had a lot, it was because my dad was up to something, right? Which meant, like night follows day, the door's going to get kicked through and he's going to get taken away. And so I was at the time doing really, really well, but inside was this thing of like, this is dangerous. Like, I don't know what's danger is coming. So subconsciously, I was just trying to fuck it up, as much as I could. And I look back on my life and that's kind of always been the case. Like, things got good for me, I'd mess it up. I got close to doing something good. I've done it the same with filmmaking. I had interest in a second film. I screwed it up. And it was always because I was subconsciously afraid of what would be on the other side of success, because it had always meant loss to me previously.
Yeah, as a therapist, let's not go there. Let's talk about the Mankind Project. What you're trying to achieve with it. let's move on to that. Tell us more about what the Mankind Project is. What you're doing for man. And
yeah. I mean, the Mankind Project. I mean, I won't go too much into the history of it, because I'm sure anyone watching this can go and have a look at the history of the Mankind Project. But it's the longest running men's-specific personal development program in the world. And its centerpiece is this thing called the New Warrior Training Adventure. And part of the way that works is that it's a leap into the unknown, right? And so people kind of think, it's secretive and all that. It's none of those things. It's just like, I'm not going to invite you to a movie and tell you the whole story. Like, it just doesn't work. And that's why once we've been through it, we protect it, because we're like, if I would have known these stages, it wouldn't have had the same effect. So the reason I say that is the problem with that, and my role is about outreach, is that you end up with something that is really beneficial for men, but you can't tell them what it is. So it ends up, each man just refers another man. And that can mean that it can be very like attracts like. So my mission within the Mankind Project, and what I'd like my tenure to be about within the Mankind Project, is I want to keep the adventure an adventure, but I want to add more around it so that people can benefit from the work without having to jump into this mysterious thing. So I want to protect that and keep it as its thing. But we've started connection groups, we've started outward facing open circles, we're developing other trainings so men can benefit from the 40 years of experience we have specifically working with men, and how we can better share that with individuals and indeed other organizations. I mean, one of the things I'm really proud of is, if you look at a lot of the men's personal development programs, coaches, all that stuff out there, you usually 9 times out of 10 find an early connection with the Mankind Project. And so I kind of want us to celebrate being that heritage brand and being like, not only do we do this, but we influence others to do it. And I think that's the next stage for the Mankind Project, really, is to solidify its place as a kind of father, a nurturing father within the personal development community.
so what are you doing on these adventures? I'm on your website. It's very, you don't say what you're really doing for 2 days, right?
Yeah, 2.5 days.
2.5 days. So
So
there's no drinking involved.
there's no drinking, no drugs. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
Also, no digital, so no mobile phone, no anything. It's a complete immersive experience.
Right.
And it's an immersive experience that kind of takes you through the hero's journey, the classic hero's journey, and creates a space where men can be challenged enough and vulnerable enough to take an honest look at their life as men and what that means to them, and gets them to look at, amongst other things, how they can serve not just themselves, but their families, their communities, and the planet. So it's a carefully scripted sequence of individual and group exercises that really get us to look at every aspect of our lives and to look at which bits are working, which bit ain't, take control of where have I been, how that's affecting me now, and where do I want to go in the future. And we leave with a personal mission. It's one of the things we leave with. And that personal mission, I think, helps men live lives of purpose. And also they have some other tools that they can use to better their lives for themselves and others.
I mean, one of the things that you mentioned with Masculinity X, well, you talked about celebration and connection. I mean, I know that, you know, it's sort of I don't know if trope's the right term, but, you know, the opposite of addiction is connection. I'm sure you've heard that phrase. And I mean, and the aspect of celebration. I mean, again, this is something that me and Volker have sort of talked about, well, with the podcast. It's, you know, we often just move on to the next episode or, you know, move on to the next series rather than going, oh, wow, you know, we've completed season 1, we've completed season 2. But at the same time, I mean, if you go on LinkedIn or, well, you know, any social media, there's, I mean, yeah, I guess I've sort of, my environment, you know, you're brought up not to brag, you know, you humility is like a, you know, a good trait to have. And I saw an interview with Louis Theroux recently, and he was sort of talking about, well, actually, you know, and he was sort of saying that that's sort of his kind of way of, and he said, can that be as toxic as not celebrating your wins or, you know, being a bit more confident? Yeah, I mean, I just sort of, well, you know, just around the connection aspect really is I get, you know, because like I think, you know, men connect and the pub is often where we connect. But, well, and I say connect, you know, almost in inverted commas, you know, I mean, I know, you know, I'll see my best friends and we'll spend a weekend together, and it might be by the Sunday that we start actually talking about deep things. And when we did our live event, some of my friends came and it was like, wow, you know, these are friends that I've known since I was 16. And I'm like, we're having conversations now we've never had. And we might not have again, but it was almost like we were in that environment. I mean, what is it that why is it men struggle to sort of talk and connect?
I think on one level, we use communication very differently. I mean, I think I think if you look at the difference between how men and women communicate, for example, you know, women communicate for connection, and we communicate really until we do something different on a very sort of operative level. We kind of communicate to make stuff happen, or we're playing that hierarchical game. Like you talk about men in the pub. You know, men talking in the pub generally, unless they're talking about a subject close to them, is really jostling for sort of social hierarchy, right? So I think we communicate for different reasons, which is one of the issues. So that's why when you bring people together in, say, a men's group, there's a reason for the vulnerability. And each man being vulnerable gives permission to the other man to be vulnerable. And so I don't think it's hard to get men to connect. I think it's hard to create the environments where men feel they can connect. My experience because I get this a lot because I run a lot of men's circles, and it's like, oh, it must be really hard to get men to open up. And I'm like, create the right environment. It's hard to get them to shut up. It's like we're walking around trying to find someone who will listen half the time, and trying to find a place where I can share, and it's not going to feel like I'm burdening the other person in some way. It's going to feel like it's a welcome two-way street and that we're helping each other.
Yeah, and we've interviewed groups where, you know, it's like, well, the focus will be, I mean, there's like Men's Shed where, you know, be a broken lawnmower, and, you know, and they say, well, if you put, and I think that, you know, that's aimed at sort of a generation above, but it's almost like, you know, if you put them in there to talk, they won't talk, but you get them tinkering, that's probably the wrong phrase, but get them working on the machine, and then, you know, the conversations organically happen.
Yeah, Nick Hornby once said something which I thought was brilliant, where he said his book Fever Pitch, which is about being a lifelong Arsenal supporter and his relationship with his dad because of that. And then he said, actually, he said, I could have called that book What Men Are Really Trying to Talk About When They're Talking About Football. And I thought that was a fascinating idea. And I think what men's sheds do brilliantly is, yes, men need a reason to come together. Because if you say we're just going to come together and just talk about our feelings, if you're into it, great. But this is what I talk about, it being demystified and simplified. You know, we men tend to need a reason to get together. I mean, you were talking about celebration, and I often talk about the 4 C's, right? And I think these are the 4 things that men need to have happy, balanced lives. So we need connection with ourself, with our families, with our community, and feeling connected to the world. We need challenge. So we need to be challenging ourselves. We need to be challenging those around us, and we need to be being challenged by those. We need contribution. We need to feel that what we're doing matters to something beyond ourselves. Service is very important to men. And we need celebration. And the reason for that, I think, is if say you would have been depressed, right? Or Volker, you'd have been depressed, or I'd have been depressed, and we were living even in an agricultural time, right? I'd have gone off to my room or whatever I was living in, and then I felt down and low and without purpose. It wouldn't have been long until you two come and knocked on the door and said, Laurence, listen, I don't know what's going on, but we have to get the harvest in, right? You've got no choice. You have to come and do this. All right, so I go out, and what do I get? Well, first of all, I get connection. I'm working with you guys, and I'm working with the rest of the men. And you know what men are like. When they're working together, they have a laugh, right? I enjoy working when I'm working with a team. So I get connection. Then it's a challenge. It's going to be hard work, right? And we're going to do it together. So I get challenge. I know that the end result will matter. When it ends, my community can now eat for the winter. And every culture has a version of harvest, right? So there'd have been a celebration at the end. It was done. Great. The whole community celebrates us, and we celebrate with our community. So connection, challenge, contribution, celebration, they're integral to our health. And if you look at men, if you talk to a man who's depressed, he will tell you, I don't feel like I'm connected to anything. There's no real challenge, right? Can't be bothered. What I do doesn't matter anyway. And no one cares about me or celebrates me even when I do try. That's often the case. And so how's that set up now? Well, come the Industrial Revolution, suddenly we're not connected anymore. We're taken out of our families and out of our communities and dumped somewhere else to work, right? It's not challenging. We are no longer the shoemaker. We're just the guy who sticks the sole on, and we do that all day, every day. We don't see the direct contribution other than we get paid a minimal amount of money, right? But we don't see the benefit. And it's never over. The work never ends, apart from a few pints on Friday night, which is a release rather than celebration. So in the society, and that's even worse now, there's no end to the work we do. It's a hamster wheel of information. Very little celebration for us as men. Very little connection. Especially for younger men, it's dating apps, Pornhub. Like we're denied those 4 things that we need to thrive. So it's no surprise that we're in such a terrible state. And adding to all of that is when the fathers got sent to the factories, who raised the boys? You know, how it would have been when we were younger in those times would have been as soon as you were 10 or something like that, you would have been a useful pair of hands as a young boy. You can go up the ladders, you can grab the tools. You'd have been out with dad. You'd have been in the world of men. And that chain of eldership has gone. There's no elders around anymore, the young men, and they're not getting those 4 things that they desperately need.
Oh, you've hit on so many things that I like to have a rant about and that we talk about. But I mean, yeah, my sort of thing is like, as a human race, we're just so obsessed with finding the easiest way to do something, but ignoring whether, well, you know, what the long-term impact of that is, and, you know, and forgetting what the long-term benefit of that is. And, you know, and it's everything from getting in the car to drive 5 minutes to the shops, which would have been a 40-minute walk, which, you know, exercise out in fresh air. You know, it's almost like we're slowly eradicating all the natural ways that you'd stop and have a pause or have a breath. And, you know, and yeah.
I actually put it a slightly different way. Someone once said to me, why is it that I just feel so miserable in this world that's set up now? I said, because you're a shit monkey without a big enough problem. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, as humans, we weren't the fastest, the strongest, the thing. What we developed was the ability, because we have this problem-solving machine, to live on the very extremities. And so we have the best problem-solving machine in the world between our ears, but we seem obsessed with trying to make our lives easier. And the problem is the easier, if we don't have a big problem to solve, that machine, our brain, turns on ourself and tries to solve the problem of me. And if I'm trying to solve the problem of me and I've got the world's best computer trying to solve the problem of me, I'm in trouble, right? Because one, I'm not a problem to be solved, right? I'm just another monkey trying to cling on to this planet in some way. So our obsession for ease is actually counterintuitive to us, because what we need is more challenge. Because that's when this thing says, all right, I'm not going to worry about me, I'm going to worry about that. And so we create problems after time. It's why we need enemies. It's why we need drama, you know, keyboard warriors getting on and having a row with someone. Oh my God, how could they dare to say that? Because we're not trying to survive anymore. I mean, of course, there are people in the world right now who are fighting for their life, but I'm talking very generally. We're not fighting for survival. We're not on the brink of extinction. And that's kind of where we need to be to bring the best of us out, sadly.
I'm looking at the time with horror, because there's just full combat. I have one last question, which kind of like, it's deliberately maybe a little bit challenging as well. If I say, so I'm just going to say it. So, I mean, are you trying to make us more manly? And I deliberately asked it like that. And what does it mean to be more manly these days? Because a lot of what we discussed is about father figures. It's about, you know, what it means to be a man. But how, you know, it's not only, if I say how we don't have the same environment we used to have, but the role of the man has changed as well, right?
The role. Yeah, I believe that the reason that I have the X in Masculinity X is because I believe we're at a crossroads right now. And, you know, and like any crossroads, we're taking stock. We're at a moment of initiation and we have to make a choice. What's worked from the past and what didn't work? And I think the world is asking men at large this question. How are you going to be? How are you going to show up? What does it mean to be a man? They're the questions that are being asked. And that means you can look at it as a crisis or you can look at it as an opportunity. Whereas I think just like middle life, where we get that midlife crisis, we can build a new model, which means we thrive for the rest of our lives. or we can just fall apart trying to copy everything we've done before. And I think as mankind, the men within mankind, we're kind of at our midlife crisis, and we're working out, what does it mean? What does it mean to be a man, and how do I want to show up in the world? And we get a choice now. We can either say we are the poison, or we can say we're the medicine. And I like to believe that if we get together in a different way, if we find different tools of coming together as men, we will find a collaborative model where we can be strong and powerful, but with rather than over. We can co-create a new model of masculinity that benefits everyone. And we have those aspects from our past. We just kind of screwed it up somewhere along the line, and was it ours? Was it late capitalism? Was it the Industrial Revolution? I mean, we can argue over that for years, forever, or we can just go, what's the type of man I want to be? And for me, it's a man that shows up in his community strong and supportive and as an ally, and makes my life better for me, for my family, for the communities I'm part of, and for the world at large.
Wow.
And that comes from being confident, competent, all those things that we enjoy, being good at stuff, making shit. Like, why not? We like it.
I mean, what you've just described there is, well, yeah, it does just sound like the perfect manifesto for living and yeah, being a content and productive person. I mean, unfortunately, we have run out of time. We say this a lot, but I feel like we've only scratched the surface. So, it'd be great to continue the conversation another time.
Always happy to come back.
I mean, for, anyone that wants to find out about Masculinity X and about Mankind, we'll put the details in the show notes, but how do we find you?
I'm basically Laurence H. Johns across all socials. So if you do a search for that, you're going to find me. You'll find my website. You'll find, I'm doing a lot on YouTube. I've started a YouTube channel called Doing the Work, and I aim to give as much content away, which is workshops, useful bits of information for men, completely free of charge. Check it out. Subscribe. That would be great.
Awesome. I've just got one quick question, because you mentioned your website. When I was looking at your website, I saw an image which had a quote, "Your anger is a gift," and I know where that quote comes from. Well, are you a Rage Against the Machine fan, Laurence?
I am a Rage Against the Machine fan.
Awesome. Right. Well, when I read that,
skateboards in the background, baseball cap. Yeah. That's me all over.
When I saw that, I was like, I think we're going to get on. But anyway, I mean, this has been a wonderful conversation. I mean, as I said, it's been a tough week. I woke up this morning and thought, shall I say, actually, I don't know if I can do today. I'm glad we have. Thanks for all the work you're doing. And sort of something that I didn't sort of reference, but, the fact that you sort of, it's like this stuff, and I say this stuff, but personal development, mental health tools. The biggest issue I have is well, for me, I've done a lot of therapy over years, which I've been in a privileged position where I can afford it. But yeah, it breaks my heart that there are people that can't access this, these sorts of services. So it's just great that, to hear of yet another sort of platform that's there to support men. So thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Feel free to reach out to Volker or David via our website, www.manupdown.com, or podcast@manupdown.com, with any feedback or to let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Hear you again soon.